Hi, my dear Sir family. As I promised, I'm about to do a video on what happens when a planet is in square to both nodes. So imagine, for example, that you have got the North Node on 3 degree of Cancer, and you've got the South Node on 3 degree of Capricorn, and you've got a planet, for example, on 3 degree of Aries or Libra. In that case, the planet is in square to both of your karmic indicators. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you about today. Do let me know in the chat box below if you have got this configuration and how you see it in your own life, because obviously that's what we can learn from. I have already made 3 videos about the nodes. So, for example, what happens if the ruler of your north node and the chart ruler, aka the ruler of your rising sign, are the same? What happens if the ruler of your rising sign is in aspect to the nodes and so forth? So today let's talk about every single planet that might be in a square aspect to the nodes. I think this might be very interesting for many of you. And let me just make some announcements. If you would like to have a reading with me, you can do so. You can go on my website, AstroViktor.com, and you can book it. Or if you would like to study with me, then I've got a lot of courses and webinars available on my website. And also, I am making weekly forecasts for each rising sign. They are usually about 20-minute long. And then you can sign up on my YouTube membership, or you can also do that on my website as well. But let's talk about this square element to the nodes, which is basically going to be forming a T-square. And from an evolutionary astrology point of view, this is called the skipped step. So in the first part of the video, I want to approach it from that angle. And the skipped step, if I'm not mistaken, it got popularized by Jeffrey Wolf Green. For a planet that squares the nodal axis, basically it's 90-degree away from both the north node and the south node, is called the skipped step. And basically, this planet forms a T-square with the nodes, and it represents a critical, unresolved karmic issue. The idea is that in the past or in past lives, the soul skipped the developmental lessons of that planet. And now in this life, that planet's energy act as a powerful block, creating tension and preventing an easy flow from the past towards your evolutionary goals. So it means that in this life, I mean, you cannot really kind of escape having to learn about that planet. So imagine that squaring planet being the price of admission. The soul must turn and face this planet's unresolved energy, and it has to be integrated into your life. So this is a chaotic point as well as a resolution point in your life. It's a planet that is a bridge between your past and your future. So from that point of view, if the sun is the skipped step, then obviously the core issue is going to be connected to ego and willpower. So in past lives, there was a failure to develop a stable, integrated, authentic self or sense of self. And maybe this was arrogance or misused will, or conversely, a weak will and no strong sense of identity. And the karmic lesson is to stop deriving identity from past achievements or future fantasies and build a genuine present moment ego that serves your soul purpose. If the moon is the skipped step, then the core issue is emotional security and nurturing. The karmic block stems from unresolved emotional codependencies, often tied to the mother or even your early family life. The soul may be stuck in a karmic childhood, unable to mature emotionally, and the lesson would be to stop nurturing from the outside world and learn to self-soothe. If Mercury is the planet of skipped step, then the core issue is the mind and communication. Maybe in the past, the mind was either misused, like deception, intellectual arrogance, or not fully developed. And this creates a block between intuition and logic. And the person's mind is there, basically your best friend and your worst enemy. Now, the lesson is to heal that split, learn to balance intuition and logic, or intuition with reasoning, and developing more of a conscious, truthful communication. If Venus is the skipped step, the core issue involves around values, love, self-worth, and potentially money as well. So maybe it's an unresolved relationship pattern or a damaged sense of self-value. Maybe the soul feels unlovable or endlessly seeking for validation through partnerships and possessions. So, of course, the lesson would be to develop an internal, non-negotiable sense of self-worth and learning to relate to others from a place of wholeness, not necessarily the needs. And what happens if Mars is the skipped step? I mean, then the core issue is around desire, assertion, action, and anger. The karmic block is tied to maybe an improper use of your will, either through aggression or anger, force, or through passivity and in the inability to act on your own desire. So there are some unresolved issues around conflict or sexuality as well. So the lesson here would be to learn to act with conscious, disciplined intention. To be frank, for me, great skip step is a fantastic stuff, but I've got Mercury in Capricorn. I'm more of a realistic person. So, okay, I cannot remember my past life. So, what can I do with this piece of information, right? Not too much. So, I want to approach it from a different point of view as well. And I know I didn't speak about Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, but I'm going to be talking about them in the next chapter. I mean, okay, let's talk about from a skip step point of view, because let's make this video complete. So if Jupiter is the planet of skipped step, then your core issue is around belief and faith. It's a crisis of faith, dogmatism, or the failure to find meaning to life. And maybe in past lives, you skip the work and just believe that, you would be saved or you would be successful. And basically, it's a lack of implementation. The lesson is to move beyond empty dogma or blind optimism and building a practical, integrated philosophy that aligns your vision with your actual life. If Saturn is the skip step, the core issue would be around responsibility and structure. So this is actually quite a heavy karmic placement. It would indicate that the soul in the past avoided responsibility, misused authority, or being crippled by guilt, shame, or fear. So the lesson would be to confront and dissolve these fears, especially the failure of judgment, and build a new positive internal authority energy. And potentially, you must learn to define your own rules and take full responsibility for your own life as well. If Uranus is the skip step, the core issue is around freedom and authenticity. The lesson, involves a past life trauma related to disruption, exile, or being an outcast. And there is that deep tension between the need for individual freedom and the fear of societal rejection. I think the lesson would be here to liberate yourself from group thinking and societal expectations, and you're going to have to be embracing your own unique genius type of energies. If Neptune is the planet of skipped step, then the core issue is the spiritual boundaries and illusions. So maybe in the past lives, there was a failure to distinguish between truth and self-deception. Maybe, in past lives, you got lost somehow in fantasy, escapism, addictions, a victim or a savior type of role. And you're going to have to be dissolving that karmic fog in this lifetime. And you're going to have to be embracing your spiritual vision, but in a grounded way. And last but not least, Pluto as being the planet of skip step, the core theme is going to be around power and transformation. I would call this as the deepest skip step actually, because maybe the soul has avoided a necessary profound death and rebirth process. And potentially maybe you have lost the power or the control, or potentially you didn't fight for your own survival, or even your life has been taken away from you. I mean, the soul might have misused power or been a victim of it. And of course, that could be leading to deep-seated fears. And the lesson would be, about facing that darkness, surrender total control, and undergo the complete psychological transformation that might have been avoided in past life. Now, like I said, talking about past life, in my opinion, is very easy. So I'd rather talk about some practical ways to work with that. So, of course, we're going to have to look at the ingredients here because we've got the South Node, which is our comfort zone, our ingrained habits. Let's call it as a default programming, but also your natural talents as well. It's what we do automatically. It's easy to do, but it can lead to stagnation, of course. Now, when we look at what the North Node is, that's your learning curve. That would be the path that we need to be taking to be able to grow further. Uh, that's a point in our chart that gives us the fulfillment. But it's unfamiliar, therefore, it could be challenging and scary as well at the same time, or simply uncomfortable. So, firstly, let's identify the planet that is in square to both of these points in our chart, because that planet is going to be the core psychological block that creates a tension in your life. Let's call it as a problem. And you're gonna have to actively work on it to solve, to make that journey from the comfort zone to your learning curve. So it can work in two ways. Either it makes staying in your comfort zone unbearable, poking you kind of like with a stick until you deal with this issue, or it blocks your path to the North Node and it acts as a gatekeeper. And you can't fully embrace your learning curve until you have consciously integrated the lessons of that squaring planet. So, but it's not just a psychological problem, it is actually your remedy as well. That's your primary tool for resolution. So, you're gonna have to master its energy, you're gonna have to unlock that planet, and then it shouldn't be causing you any more issues. So let's look at it from that point of view. Because what happens if the sun's squaring the nodes? Well, obviously, again, the core identity and the confidence is gonna pop up here. So you get stuck because you either lack the fundamental self-confidence to leave your comfort zone, which is your self node, or your ego and pride gets in the way of humility that is needed to your learning curve. So what you must do is you must consciously build this stable, authentic self of self. You're gonna have to figure out who I am. You're gonna have to separate from your habits and your ambitions. The work there is to develop this genuine self-esteem so you can act with confidence and will. Obviously, you're gonna have to look at where these nodes are, what sign the planet is in, and so forth. If the sun is in the sign of Aquarius, we're gonna have to become authentic and we're gonna have to act the way we want to. Okay, what happens if it's the moon? The block is going to be the emotional security and certain habits. And maybe you get pulled back into old family patterns, moods, dependencies, your emotional needs. Feel at odds with your own growth path, making you feel too insecure to take the leap. What you need to do is you must learn to reparent yourself. The work is to find emotional security within yourself rather than in the past, like within yourself rather than in the past. You must consciously create a new comfort zone that supports your growth rather than one that just repeats old patterns. So, of course, you might want to be looking at what the moon rules in your natal chart, and of course, what house the moon falls into, because that's going to be giving you further indications. Now, what happens if Mercury square the nodes? The block is obviously thinking and communication. So basically, your mind is your block. Maybe you are stuck in a analysis paralysis, anxiety, negative thoughts. It's kind of like a mental loop. You might intellectualize your problems instead of solving them. So, practically speaking, this is going to become, or this is the lesson here is to become the master of your own mind, not its victim, though. This is about practical mindfulness, learning to question your own thoughts, and you're going to have to develop clear, objective communication. You have to learn to think your way out of that south node and north node tension. Then Venus being in square to the nodes, then the conflict is with your values, self-worth, and relationships. Potentially you are blocked because you don't feel beautiful enough, you don't feel good enough. You might sabotage your own growth by making choices, especially financial or relationship choices, that reflect your old, comfortable, low sense of self-esteem. So you must build this new non-negotiable personal values. You're gonna have to build that internal self-worth. And basically, once you truly value yourself, your choices will naturally align with your learning curve, which is your north node, instead of dragging you back into your comfort zone. What happens with Mars squaring the nodes? The block is action and drive or assertiveness. You feel stuck either from passivity or from impulsive, angry actions. Either way, this is, I mean, the passivity would indicate that your Mars is super weak, for example. And then the angry actions is a stronger Mars. But either way, that sabotage your progress. And you might struggle, with how to initiate things in life. So you must develop a healthy, conscious relationship with that inner warrior. And the lesson would be here to learn to be assertive rather than aggressive or passive. Let's imagine that Mars is in your sixth house, then maybe sport is going to be the key for you. Now, Jupiter being the apex of the T square, then the belief and the vision is the conflict there. Maybe you are blocked by your own philosophy. You may believe it will all work out magically, and then therefore you never do the work, or you scatter your energy into too many directions, and then you are ending up lacking focus. So the practical work with that would be that, you're gonna have to find a grounded, workable belief system. The work is to turn your broad vision into a practical step-by-step plan. And you must find, kind of like one truth to follow and commit to it rather than getting lost in multiple possibilities. Saturn squaring the nodes. then often the problem is fear, guilt, or responsibility. It's kind of like, oh, you know what? I shouldn't be doing this because I'm going to become an imposter, because I haven't mastered something yet. So you are held back somehow because of your own fear of failure or being judged or not feeling ready for something. So obviously the inner critic within you is actually whispering into your own ear. So you must become your own authority. The work is to build that mature, discipline, structured sense of self. So you must take on responsibilities and you must prove your fears wrong. And then the tangible achievements are going to follow. With Uranus, which would talk to us about freedom and authenticity, maybe you are anxious, you've got that anxious pull between the familiar and the new, and maybe you are terrified of change. And maybe subconsciously you blow up your life just to feel free, sabotaging the real progress. So you must learn to become the innovator, not just the rebel. Uh, the work is to embrace change. You must find the courage to be the authentic version of yourself, and potentially you're going to have to decondition from your old programming. Like I spoke about in the previous video, that the self node is often the inherited habits from our parents. So, especially with Uranus, you have been coded in certain ways, and you're going to have to be creating your own kind of like coding that works for you. With Neptune, the block is boundaries, escapism, or confusion. Like I said, you might feel lost in the fog and you can't see your path clearly. And therefore, you might escape through fantasy, drugs, playing the role of the victim. So you're going to have to be able to create boundaries in this lifetime. This would be about the grounded reality. You're going to have to set firm boundaries and face reality even when it's uncomfortable. But you must apply your imagination though, but in a very practical way. And last but not least, Pluto. Like I said previously, the block is going to be connected to power, control, and fear. This is often a very deep psychological block. And maybe you are terrified of being weak or powerless, and therefore you end up controlling everything, which keeps you stuck. Or you feel so powerless that you won't even try to grow. So you must face your own shadow. It's a psychological honesty, basically. You're going to have to be honest with yourself that I do have got the problem and I'm going to have to work on it. There are those hidden fears and motivations there that needs to be exposed. And the true power is going to come from the ability to let go of control and transforming your own fears. Okay, so this is a short explanation. Of course, I would be able to talk about this a lot deeper. And I believe I did make a webinar about this before, actually, where we did look at it a little bit deeper. But I think it's a starting point for you right now. So you can start looking at your own chart and figure out what that planet signifies. So one more time, that apex planet, the planet that is in square to both of your nodes, are going to be the resolution as well as the poison or the antidote to the poison. So you might want to be looking at what sign it falls into, what additional aspects it makes, what house it rules, and then you try to put the picture together. So, do let me know if you have got any topics that you would like to learn a little bit more about, or you would like to see my own take on it, because I am planning to carry on this series. because at the end of the day, the intention of this channel is to teach you and to give you the necessary information for self-improvement rather than making predictions that Aries rising say you're gonna get hit by a car tomorrow, so watch out on the roads. Or Aries is the best in the bedroom and Virgo is not the greatest in the bedroom. I don't want to make these type of videos, so I'd rather do something that is actually in your own interest. So thank you very much for being around. I hope you liked the video. If you did so, please press like, follow the channel, share the video, all those goodies so that we can grow together. Have a lovely weekend, everyone. Bye bye.